Hi there. I'm glad to welcome you to my channel, World of Stories. I have a lot of interesting life stories that I want to share with you. Enjoy listening.
Bridget cupped icy water in her hands and washed her face. The noise in her head gradually subsided. Leaning heavily on the edge of the sink, she looked at herself in the mirror. Her pupils were dilated, her skin pale as chalk, and her lips trembled slightly. "Calm down. Pull yourself together," Bridget whispered to herself, drying her wet face. The woman at the neighboring sink glanced at the strange stranger in bewilderment and moved away. Bridget picked up a small travel bag and hurriedly left the restroom. Behind the door, the noise of the airport engulfed her. Over the loudspeaker, they announced the boarding for her flight. Bridget swayed, her ears started ringing again, and her palms and back became covered in sticky cold sweat. Looking around, she gloomily made her way towards the lined-up queues. "Excuse me. Is this the boarding gate for Flight 102?" a man called out to Bridget. Distractedly, Bridget nodded and started rummaging in her bag for her passport and boarding pass. "They say the weather isn't very favorable for flying. I hope we'll get there without any problems," the stranger continued. Bridget flinched and dropped her passport, which she finally found in the depths of her bag. "Sorry, I'm very afraid of flying," the girl nervously swallowed. "Could you not make it worse?" "Well, I always say something inappropriate." "I apologize, please," the man responded. Bridget nodded and turned towards the counters. "Just need to get to my seat and fall asleep as soon as possible and wake up at the destination," she thought to herself. Checking her boarding pass, the girl made her way through the airplane cabin. Her seat was located at the very back, next to the window. Quickly stowing her bag in the overhead compartment, Bridget promptly sat down and fastened her seatbelt. Outside, it started raining. Gusts of wind flapped the edges of the tarp covering some luggage on a massive cart. The gray sky, shrouded in clouds, looked inhospitable. "Oh, it turns out we're neighbors," came a voice from the side. Bridget frowned, put on a polite smile, and turned to the man who had just appeared next to her. "What a coincidence. Let's get acquainted then. My name is Jerry." "Pleased to meet you," the girl said. "I'm Bridget." Jerry skillfully tossed his backpack into the overhead compartment and settled into his seat. "Well, don't worry. If anything happens, I'll help you put on a life jacket or a parachute." "What parachute?" Bridget paled again and looked at her neighbor in horror. "Are parachutes being distributed here? And you must be joking, right?" "I'm sorry, but I'm not in the mood for jokes right now. I'm really terrified of flying, and I'll try to sleep." She decisively turned away and settled into a more comfortable position. The man glanced at Bridget askance and smirked. "How sneaky," he muttered and opened his reserve book, some detective novel. Bridget, after enduring the takeoff, fell into a restless sleep. Anxious gray images flickered beneath her closed eyelids. Several times, she woke up because her head slipped off the uncomfortable travel pillow. Startled once again, Bridget emerged from her sticky slumber. The plane was shaking. The main lights were off, and voices could be heard from all sides. The girl turned to her neighbor, intending to ask what had happened, but he was no longer there. Leaning over the empty seat, she cautiously tapped the shoulder of the guy sitting by the aisle. "Excuse me." The guy, who was intensely staring towards the front of the cabin, suddenly flinched and turned his pale face. "What happened, do you know?" The plane shook again, and Bridget gripped the armrests with all her strength. "Why is it so dark and turbulent?" "It's probably turbulence," the guy blurted out abruptly and turned away again. Bridget closed her eyes and began to count slowly to herself. It was supposed to calm her down, but it was entirely ineffective in this situation. And where did the persistent joker, Jerry, disappear to? Suddenly, she thought that she would feel a little more secure if he were next to her. "But aren't you sleeping?" a whisper came from above her ear. Bridget slightly opened one eye. Out of nowhere, there was Jerry himself. Where did he come from? "I'm not sleeping. It's shaking so much." "What happened?" The girl grabbed her fellow passenger's shoulder. This is turbulence, right? Jerry looked at Bridget skeptically and nodded. Yes. The weather let us down. It's better if you don't sleep, your ears might get blocked, and your head will hurt for a long time afterward. Bridget glanced out the window. Thin predatory lightning threads sparkled in almost pitch darkness. The plane seemed to jump high in the air and then swiftly descend into the abyss. A lump rose in her throat. She grasped the armrests again and felt her neighbor carefully cover her icy hand with his warm palm. Unable to look away, Bridget continued to gaze spellbound at the window. Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the swirling gray sides of the clouds. At one point, a bright flash illuminated everything, followed by a vibration throughout the aircraft. The girl closed her eyes in horror, afraid to imagine what was actually happening. Suddenly, her eyelids felt heavy as lead, and a shiver ran through her body. Bridget struggled to open her eyes. Something ghostly white was dangling in front of her face. She started swatting away the persistent vision. Someone grabbed her hands and pressed them against her knees. Something plastic and cold descended onto her face. She inhaled and felt her lungs fill with oxygen. The haze gradually lifted. Bridget turned her head with difficulty and saw Jerry, wearing an oxygen mask on his face. With one hand, he continued to press her wrists against her own knees, apparently fearing she would remove her mask. Through the loudspeakers, the aircraft captain was speaking something very unclear. Bridget could only make out something about landing due to technical reasons, and her heart pounded like crazy. Despite the mask, she felt a shortage of air. The plane sharply descended, and her ears clogged to the point that her neck began to ache. A powerful jolt made Bridget lift off her seat. The seatbelt painfully dug into her body. The next jolt felt even stronger. The girl heard a loud crack. From somewhere near the front of the cabin, a cart rolled, rumbling, in some strange trajectory. The plane jumped again. In the neighboring row, a luggage compartment door flew open and ricocheted towards Bridget in a peculiar path. She watched as the piece of plastic flew towards her face in slow motion. At the last moment, Jerry attempted to catch the door but only managed to push it slightly away. The treacherous object struck Bridget's temple, and consciousness left her. Jerry leaned towards Bridget. The oxygen mask was getting in the way, so he removed it and began to feel her pulse. The plane continued to shake. Without the mask, the man suddenly caught a strong smell of burning plastic. Damn it, he cursed and leaned over Bridget, looking out the window. The aircraft's movement slowed down. People were running away from the airport building. The smell of smoke grew stronger. Jerry quickly unfastened his seatbelt and proceeded to do the same for Bridget. Her lifeless head dangled, blood flowing from her temple. Finally, the buckle yielded. The cabin filled with acrid smoke, but Jerry could hear that the aircraft crew had already opened the doors and deployed emergency slides for evacuation. The man nudged the bewildered guy sitting by the aisle. Hurry up. The guy stood up and began to open the overhead compartment. You've gone crazy. Jerry shouted. Hurry to the exit. There's a fire on the plane, can't you see? The guy seemed to ignore him and continued fussing with the luggage, pulling out his bags. Jerry coughed. The smoke was increasing. Standing up, he surveyed the cabin. Many passengers were frantically pulling down their baggage. Idiots. Jerry took a water bottle from the seat pocket, tore off a light scarf from Bridget's neck, and poured the liquid onto the fabric. Pressing the scarf to the girl's face, he lifted her up and headed towards the aisle. Passengers moved chaotically. Some tried to push others aside, while some dragged their suitcases along. Breathing became increasingly difficult. Make way. I'm in business class. You must let me out first, a demanding voice came from near the exit. Jerry held Bridget, who still hadn't regained consciousness, and slowly made his way towards the exit. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed a 3-year-old child sitting on a seat with his legs up. The child was silently crying. There were no adults nearby. Oh, damn it. The man pushed someone's suitcase that was blocking the aisle under a seat and leaned down to the child. Where's your mom? The boy sniffled and pointed downward. Jerry lowered his gaze. Under the smoke haze, he saw a lifeless body. After putting Bridget over his shoulder, he grabbed the child with his free hand and clumsily maneuvered through the beginning of the cabin. Handing the child to a flight attendant, he asked another crew member to help with Bridget. Once they carefully brought the girl down the emergency slide, Jerry ran back into the cabin. "Where are you going?" "Stop," the flight attendant grabbed the man's sleeve. "It's dangerous there. You might suffocate. You can't go there. The child's mother is still there." Jerry broke free and walked through the smoke-filled cabin, gripping the seatbacks. Finally, he saw the woman lying on the floor. Lifting her under the arms, he dragged her towards the exit. Jerry felt like he had seen a few more unconscious people. There are still people there. He leaned over the saved woman. "Help is coming. They'll be here soon." The flight attendant looked around in confusion. Sirens could be heard from outside. Jerry approached the exit, took a few deep breaths. The air from outside, after the unbearable smoke in the cabin, felt sweet and tangible. He turned around, ready to go back into the smoky belly of the plane, but his head suddenly spun, and darkness filled his vision. Jerry woke up in the hospital. He had an oxygen mask on his face, which prevented him from moving his head. Annoyed, he pulled it down, but someone's hand gently stopped him. "Hey, take it easy, buddy. Are you tired of living? If you're awake, just lie still and wait for the doctor," a huge orderly sitting on a small stool next to the bed said, looking around vigilantly. "And you don't need to say anything to me," he raised his voice as he saw Jerry attempting to mumble something. "I understand everything. You want to know what's happening, but for now, just lie still. Don't make my life more difficult. They brought 20 people here, you know. And I have to keep an eye on each one of them." "Hey." The orderly abruptly stood up. Lady, return to the stretcher immediately. You're suspected to have a fracture. Where are you going?" Taking advantage of the orderly being distracted by the defiant patient, Jerry finally removed the mask and turned his head. He wanted to see Bridget and make sure she was okay. But instead of Bridget, the man's gaze fell upon a vaguely familiar face. A slender curly-haired brunette with sharp features, pressing the mask to her face, was struggling to breathe in the oxygen. Her gaze was somewhat unfocused, but her eyes were desperately scanning the corridor, as if searching for someone. The man strained his memory. Exactly. She's the mother of the same child he carried out of the plane. It's good that she's all right. When Jerry carried this girl out of the burning cabin, he wasn't certain whether she was alive. She's probably searching for her child now, Jerry thought. "Miss." He awkwardly slid off the bed and quietly approached the stranger. She glanced at him disinterestedly. "Miss, you're probably worried about your son?" Her pupils dilated. She removed the mask from her face and tried to say something, but only a hoarse sound escaped her throat. Immediately, she began to suffocate. Jerry quickly moved to her and put the mask back on. Breathe. Please calm down. Your child is fine. Unfortunately, I don't know where he is right now, but I will definitely try to find out." The woman let out a spasmodic cry and looked at Jerry with pleading eyes. "He's fine. I personally handed him over to the crew. Most likely, in this chaos, they haven't figured out whose child he is yet, and you can't speak right now. So, we will fix everything, don't worry." Jerry looked around. Approaching him was the orderly, wearing a face that didn't bode well. "What did I tell you, sir?" The burly man took Jerry by the elbow and started nudging him back towards the bed. "Why are you bothering other injured people? Listen, this girl was flying with her son. Apparently, she lost consciousness during the rough landing and now doesn't know where her child is or can't even ask. Understand, will you?" The orderly blinked in confusion and glanced at the girl. "Well, no children were brought here," he whispered, trying to ensure the woman wouldn't hear. "That doesn't mean anything." Jerry also lowered his voice to avoid further distressing the young mother. "The boy is fine. Most likely, they sent him somewhere until they figure things out. The orderly nodded in response and rubbed his chin. Wait here. I'll try to find out something. He headed towards the exit of the reception room but stopped, wagged his finger at Jerry, and smiled. And don't bother other patients, understood? I won't. Jerry waved his hand and smiled in return. For some reason, I knew it was you causing the commotion here, a quiet voice sounded near his ear. Bridget. He grabbed the girl who had approached him by the shoulders and looked into her eyes. Are you okay? She frowned, and the man quickly withdrew his hands. Sorry. Sorry, I was just really worried about you. What about your head? He pointed to the bandage around Bridget's forehead. Amazingly, not even a concussion. They told me to stay here in the hospital until morning, and then they'll let me go if everything's fine. And what about you? Yeah, no idea. Jerry smiled broadly. I guess I just inhaled too much smoke. I feel pretty good, though. I know it was you who pulled me out. If it weren't for you. Thank you. Bridget took Jerry's hand in hers and shook it with emotion. I knew there was a reason I'm so afraid of flying. I'm definitely going back home by train. At that moment, the orderly returned to the reception room. He was leading a little boy by the hand. The girl with the oxygen mask became alert and tried to stand up. Jerry immediately rushed over and placed a hand on her shoulder. No need. No need. You'll get dizzy. You might fall. Your child is fine. Upon seeing his mother, the boy immediately freed his tiny hand from the orderly's large palm and ran forward. Mom. The child clung to the girl's legs and started wailing. She stroked her son's dark curls, tears streaming down her cheeks. Jerry shook his head. Bridget, please stay here. I'll try to find out from the doctor how long she'll have to stay here. 30 minutes later, the man returned and led Bridget aside. She had already established a connection with the injured family and was playing patty cake with the toddler. Well, the girl asked anxiously. It's still not entirely clear. Jerry ruffled his hair and pondered. Most likely, they'll keep Destiny, that's her name by the way, here for a few more days. She can't speak at the moment, but we'll try to find out if the child's father can help. If not, they'll probably take the child to a foster home until Destiny recovers. A foster home. He's already stressed enough. We need to come up with something else. Jerry pulled out a crumpled piece of paper and a pen from his back pocket. He approached the girl and asked something quietly. She nodded and began writing on the paper. After reading what she had written, the man thought for a moment and returned to Bridget. Do you have a phone? I seem to have lost mine, he asked the girl. Oddly enough, I do. Bridget took out her mobile phone from her jacket pocket. Here you go. What did you find out? Well, I found out that Destiny is a single mother. The child's father died before his birth, so no one can help here. Destiny doesn't have parents either, she's an orphan. I'll try to connect with my brother. He's here on business and arrived a week ago. Jerry, biting his lip, dialed the phone number. Okay. Well, it seems right. I'm afraid of dialing the wrong number, of course. Hello, hello. Duncan, is that you? He pulled the phone slightly away from his ear, and the screams could be heard from the speaker. Yes, I called as soon as I could. Stop yelling. Jerry shrugged awkwardly and moved away from Bridget, continuing his conversation. The girl strained her hearing but couldn't hear anything else. Then she approached Destiny, who was sitting on the couch, huddled and holding her son, while a doctor stood next to her, saying something. She only nodded in response. Do you realize that you're putting yourself in danger? You need the IVs. You can't do without oxygen right now. Is there anyone who can take care of your child? Unfortunately, you're not in a condition to be responsible for a minor. Besides, the child is too young. Bridget coughed, catching the doctor's attention. I'm sorry. I can take care of the baby, she said. The doctor looked at Bridget, his gaze lingering on her bandage. Destiny widened her eyes in surprise. You yourself have been injured, head trauma. Do you think it would be wise to entrust the child to you? The doctor raised an eyebrow. It's all fine. I talked to Duncan on the phone. Jerry joined the conversation. Destiny, don't worry. From the expression on Destiny's face, it was clear that she no longer fully understood what was happening. Doctor, please allow me a few minutes. Jerry confidentially took the doctor's arm and led him aside. Destiny made a gesture and looked at Bridget, who shrugged in response. We're trying to come up with something so that they don't take your son to, well, to a foster home. I have a feeling that Jerry will figure it out. Don't worry. Bridget reassured her. Destiny shook her head in disbelief and held her son closer to herself. Finally, the radiant Jerry returned to the girls. Here's the plan. My brother, Duncan, will arrive soon. We have a network of medical clinics specializing in trauma and post-traumatic recovery. You and Quentin will be allocated a family room. Everything worked out perfectly because I wasn't sure if this branch was already operational. Well, in general, you can relax. Jerry spoke the last words quieter and slower, watching as tears filled Destiny's eyes. The girl grabbed the scribbled piece of paper and found a small empty space to write something. Jerry read it and frowned. You women are very strange creatures. Why do you always seek problems where there are none? He seemed visibly annoyed but tried to keep himself in check. Bridget cautiously took the paper from the man's hands. I can't afford that. I don't have that kind of money, she read. Destiny, we all ended up in an absolutely terrible situation, Bridget exclaimed. We barely made it out alive. You know that it was Jerry who saved you and Quentin. I suppose we're in the same boat now, and the best thing we can do is stick together and help each other, just to keep our sanity intact. Jerry, how much does accommodation cost in your clinic? I'm willing to pay for everything. Oh my God. Jerry grabbed his head. Did I even mention payment to you? What are you thinking? Calm down, both of you. Destiny, consider that I take responsibility for you and Quentin. After all, I'm not the type to abandon a task halfway. Destiny shifted her gaze between Jerry and Bridget. Finally, she nodded decisively. For the next half hour, the subdued group waited in silence for Jerry's brother to arrive. Bridget managed to write several dozen messages. Jerry glanced sideways at Bridget, lost in his own thoughts. Destiny and Quentin, still embracing, seemed to have dozed off. And finally, a tall, well-built blonde man with a full beard appeared in the waiting room. He was pushing a wheelchair, accompanied by a small chubby woman who was pulling a cart with an oxygen cylinder. Well, firefighter, the man playfully punched Jerry's shoulder. Never a dull day, huh? Jerry cheered up, and a smile appeared on his face. Oh, Duncan, you're great for coming so quickly. I'll call the doctor right now. He needs to finalize this discharge. The man jumped up and quickly headed to the nurse's station. Meanwhile, Duncan extended his hand to Bridget. Hello, lovely stranger. Are we saving you? Bridget timidly shook the offered hand and shook her head. No, I'm fine. This is Destiny. Let me introduce you. And this is her son, Quentin. We need to save them. Duncan greeted Destiny and nodded to the woman who accompanied him. She started doing something. All right, young lady, sit down here carefully. The woman supported Destiny's shoulder and gently seated her in the wheelchair. Now let's change the mask quickly, and we can go. Jerry returned accompanied by the doctor. The doctor carefully inspected the wheelchair and the oxygen cylinder, nodded approvingly, and handed 2 tablets with papers to Destiny and Bridget. Sign here. I hope I'm leaving you in good hands. It's an excellent wheelchair. We can only dream of having something like this. He admiringly stroked the wheelchair, shook his head, said his goodbyes, and swiftly disappeared. Well, shall we go? Jerry turned to Bridget, who blinked in confusion. And where am I supposed to go? Where? Jerry exclaimed in surprise. Aren't we all in the same boat? Did you forget? Bridget hesitated for a moment, nodded, and silently joined everyone towards the exit. For some reason, it felt like the right decision now. She lowered her head and cautiously observed Jerry. He and his brother were completely different. If Duncan resembled a Viking from Scandinavian folklore, Jerry would fit better in Victorian England. Bridget could easily imagine him in a formal suit, playing bridge at a club. Jerry was tall, not shorter than his brother, but his physique was strikingly different. Long legs and arms, a slender build, and a straight posture. He moved swiftly yet smoothly. His slightly elongated face, with intelligent gray eyes, was framed by dark wavy hair, which he kept adjusting from time to time. Perhaps Bridget had always chosen men of Duncan's type, sturdy, loud, and standing out. But now she couldn't take her eyes off her savior. As if sensing her gaze, Jerry looked at Bridget and gave her a slight smile. Her heart started beating faster. What's wrong with me, she thought. I'm thinking nonsense. A fully equipped ambulance awaited them in the parking lot, outfitted with the latest technology. Wow. Living in style. Bridget exclaimed. These are our workhorses, Duncan proudly patted the shiny sides of the vehicle. Saving lives. It's brand new. You're going to be its first patients. We just opened. Everyone settled into the ambulance, with the small woman who accompanied Duncan taking the wheel. Bridget looked at her with admiration. She herself didn't drive and was afraid to get a driver's license. After a few minutes, the ambulance arrived at a brand new light blue building surrounded by neatly trimmed trees. It was getting dark outside, so there was no opportunity to explore the area. Destiny, our doctors will examine you and assign you to a room. Quentin will stay with us for now. All right? Duncan said. The worried girl glanced at her son but nodded. The head doctor provided us with his office. We'll wait there, Duncan informed. Well, lead the way, Jerry looked around with interest. I've never been here before. Finally, all four of them settled in a small cozy room. Quentin was given a stethoscope, and the child eagerly started listening to the couch. The others relaxed in their chairs. A pleasant-looking secretary brought a tray with coffee, tea, and snacks. Bridget, who always enjoyed eating, suddenly felt a slight nausea. Must be from stress, she thought. Meanwhile, Duncan mixed a generous portion of cream, sugar, and coffee in a large cup, popped a cookie into his mouth, and turned his gaze to Bridget. So, Bridget, how did you end up so far from home? Under his intense gaze, a shiver ran down the girl's spine for some reason. Oh, nothing interesting, Duncan. I work at a publishing company, and there's a conference taking place here where I was supposed to speak. Now I don't even know if the presentation will happen. She blinked several times, trying to dispel the light haze that suddenly appeared before her eyes. It didn't help. The haze thickened. The last thing she saw was Jerry's frightened face as he rushed towards her. Bridget regained consciousness, partially opened her eyes, but immediately closed them again. She felt someone nearby, but she didn't want to face the blinding white light again. You woke up, Jerry's voice sounded very close. Yes, Bridget swallowed with difficulty. A cool glass touched her lips. She took a few sips and caught her breath. Thank you. What happened? You passed out. You did have a concussion after all. Once you regain your senses a bit, you'll need to undergo some examinations, and please, don't resist. I won't resist. Why would you think so? Bridget smiled, still keeping her eyes closed. She heard Jerry's quiet laughter. Get some more rest. I'll be back soon. Over the next few days, Bridget obediently gave blood, lay in the magnetic resonance imaging machine, and underwent numerous tests in addition to that. Destiny started feeling better. She no longer needed to constantly wear an oxygen mask. Her voice returned. Every evening, Bridget and Destiny gathered on the small balcony in their shared room. They shared stories from their lives, discussed plans for the future, and laughed at Duncan's jokes, as he often joined them. Jerry visited Bridget every day, but it was evident that he was overwhelmed with work, leaving him with little time to spend with her. Frankly, this fact saddened the girl. Yes, Duncan was cheerful and very warm-hearted, and being with him was never boring, but Bridget really wanted Jerry to spend an evening together with everyone at least once. But there were small joys too. Every morning, Jerry arranged little surprises for Bridget, Destiny, and Quentin, calling them gifts from a squirrel. He would bring beautiful pieces of local gemstones, cedar cones, or simply fresh pastries from a nearby bakery. In short, he made an effort to bring joy to the accident survivors and the child. However, each time Bridget received another present, she secretly wished that he would give her something personal. Even if it were the simplest item, brought specifically for her, Bridget could understand that Jerry was thinking only of her when choosing the gift. But the man remained consistently polite and bestowed equal gifts upon everyone. Finally, Bridget's attending physician informed her that the danger had passed. She could go home. She booked a train ticket and now began packing her things. Casting a glance around the cozy room, she sighed heavily. For some reason, she felt uneasy in her heart, and she simply didn't want to leave. There was a sense of leaving behind an unfinished manuscript forever. This feeling of incompleteness weighed on her, demanding action, urging her to write the final chapter and put a period or leave a hint for continuation. A knock sounded on the door. "Come in." Jerry entered the room. "Surprise?" Bridget smiled sincerely. "It's already evening, and you always come only in the mornings." The man, who had been hiding his hands until then, pulled out a small bouquet from behind his back. "I saw these and decided I had to give them to you." Bridget was delighted. Finally, he brought that personal gift, and flowers too. Lilies of the valley. But wow! Where did you find them in September? She accepted the bouquet and delicately touched the soft wax-like inflorescences. She inhaled the cool fragrance and closed her eyes. Amazing! And still, where did you find them? Where I found them, they're no longer there, Jerry smiled crookedly. Consider that lilies of the valley bloomed in September just for you. Are you packing your bag? He nodded towards the bed where Bridget's belongings were laid out. Yes, tomorrow morning, I'm taking the train. The doctor said I could already go. Well, the man paused, attentively studying her. I hope your journey will be smooth. Well, take care, Bridget. Yes, you too. Bridget looked perplexedly at the door that closed behind Jerry. An icy sharp shard lodged in her throat. Somehow, it felt like their farewell should have gone differently. Oh well, she shook her head and went to the room where Destiny was. The girl had also been discharged, and they were supposed to travel together. Bridget specifically booked the entire compartment so that no one would disturb them during the long journey. Are you ready? Bridget knocked on the door and poked her head into the room. Almost. Destiny's voice came from the bathroom. Bridget, come in. We're going to have tea. Bridget settled comfortably in the woven chair on the balcony, waiting for her friend. Destiny put Quentin to sleep and joined her. Are you feeling down? Don't you want to leave? Destiny squinted, looking at Bridget. Not exactly. It's just everything. It feels strange. I thought it would be different. Don't create problems for yourself. Let's enjoy this evening. In 2 days, it's back to work, errands, and busyness. But here, it's so nice and peaceful. The air is so fresh and sweet. Both girls fell silent, admiring the view unfolding in the twilight. The next morning, Bridget, Destiny, and Quentin headed to the train station. Duncan volunteered to see them off. Throughout the journey, he engaged in his usual conversation, entertaining the girls. But even as Bridget laughed at Duncan's jokes, she continued to experience a strange sense of sadness, loss, disappointment, and unfinished manuscript. She remained lying there, in the hospital room. She was literally screaming at the girls, "Do something. You can't just leave me like this." After sending their meager luggage to the train's shelves, they stepped outside to bid farewell. They exchanged ordinary phrases for a while, but then Quentin whimpered, and Destiny, apologizing, hugged Duncan. Goodbye. And returned to the carriage. Bridget, I've been thinking, Duncan began, glancing at Destiny. The girl started looking at him with interest. At that moment, a hand rested on Bridget's shoulder. Startled, she turned around. Phew, I made it. Before her stood a smiling Jerry, holding a bouquet of lilacs in his hands. But I couldn't let you go without a farewell bouquet, right? This time it's lilacs. Bridget suddenly felt the icy shard in her throat rapidly melting away. Jerry, be honest, do you have an underground botanical garden? Well, I won't confess to that. By the way, I almost forgot. Would you be so kind as to give me your phone number? I could have looked it up in your medical records, of course, but that wouldn't be nice. I was hoping you wouldn't mind if I called. Bridget dictated her phone number to Jerry, quickly hugged him and Duncan. Goodbye. And jumped into the carriage. Entering the compartment, she smiled at Destiny and fell onto the seat, burying her face in the cool, delicate flowers. The compartment immediately filled with the fresh scent of lilacs. Destiny looked out the window and waved her hand, noting Duncan's bewildered expression. It's all clear with you, Destiny smirked and shook her head, while Bridget happily gazed at the trees passing by outside the window, thinking that the manuscript was finally finished, but the sequel would definitely follow. Upon returning to her hometown, Bridget immersed herself in work. During her treatment, she had completely gotten used to a less hectic schedule. Her boss, of course, was understanding since she had experienced tremendous stress. Her colleagues also tried to provide support, but she still needed to get back into the rhythm as quickly as possible. There was no time for prolonged contemplation. After coming home and taking a shower, Bridget immediately fell into a deep sleep. And in the morning, the work process started again, consuming all of her free time. A week flew by like that. When the weekend finally arrived, Bridget was able to take a break from work. It was then that she realized Jerry hadn't contacted her all those days. Waking up on Saturday morning, Bridget aimlessly wandered around the kitchen, switching on the coffee maker, rearranging spice jars, and wiping dust off the windowsill with her finger. She twirled her phone in her hands. There were no missed calls. He never called me, she wrote a short message in the messenger. What a jerk, came the immediate reply. Bridget chuckled and dialed his number. But he's not a jerk, she said instead of a greeting. He saved your life, by the way. Not only mine but Quentin's too, Destiny replied. It's just, Bridget, it's just the way girls do it, if you didn't know. What way? Are we supposed to instantly call a guy a jerk without asking any questions when complaining about him, or else we're bad friends? Is that how it works? It's all nonsense, in my opinion. Oh, wait a moment, Destiny. I have another call. Bridget took the phone away from her ear and looked at it. Duncan appeared on the phone screen. Duncan's phone number was saved in Bridget's smartphone since the first day they were waiting for him in the hospital reception area. Destiny, Duncan is calling. Something might have happened. Hold on, I'll call you back. Yes, okay. Don't forget to call me later. Destiny shouted and hung up. Hello, Bridget cautiously answered. Bridget, how are you? Duncan's voice was filled with a smile. Everything is fine. And how about you? Did something happen? No, nothing happened. I just have one question for you. A question? But thank God, for a moment, I thought something bad happened. Bridget caught her breath. Don't mind me, Duncan, I've been so nervous lately. Bridget, Duncan hesitated, and Bridget heard the beeping of the second line in the phone. This time, her heart suddenly stopped and started racing very fast. She glanced at the screen. An unknown number, but for some reason, her throat dried up, and she felt joyful and spring-like inside. Duncan, please forgive me. I have another call. I need to answer it urgently. I'll call you back. Without waiting for an answer, she ended Duncan's call and immediately accepted the other one. Yes. Bridget, the voice on the other end sounded uncertain. Is that you? It's me, the girl smiled, running her finger along the vase with long withered lilacs. Who else could it be? Anyone, really? Jerry let out a relieved sigh. You see, there's some mystery with your number. I saved it, called the next day, and some unfamiliar guy picked up. Maybe you mixed up the digits, the girl laughed. Yeah, I thought I'd check your medical record since you didn't mind my call. I searched everywhere, but it's nowhere to be found. Can you imagine? I can. Bridget sat on the windowsill and dreamily looked at the cloudy sky. She loved the fact that Jerry had to make an effort to find her number. It seemed incredibly romantic now. And what happened next? Next? Well, I remembered that I called Duncan from your phone. He said he just changed his smartphone yesterday because he accidentally drowned the old one. Just my luck. Anyway, then I found Destiny's card, wrote to her, and now I'm calling you. Such a conspirator, Bridget exclaimed. We just talked to her, and she didn't say a word about you. Yeah, I asked her not to tell. Jerry was clearly pleased with himself. I wanted to tell you the whole story myself. And by the way, I'm heading back home tomorrow morning, just in time for Sunday. Would you like to have dinner with me? I would, Bridget smiled. By the way, you say that Duncan doesn't have my phone number, but he just called me a while ago, by the way. Wanted to ask something. Oh. Well, that's strange. Maybe your card turned up. Anyway, I'll find out. No need, I promise to call back. I'll ask him myself. Think about where you want to take me and write it down. Okay. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow, looking forward to it. And me too. Bridget hung up the phone, pressed the receiver to her chest, and twirled around the kitchen. She bumped her hip on the corner of the table and hissed in pain. Oh, right. I completely forgot to call Duncan back, she said to herself. She tapped the screen, dialing the number. Hello, Duncan. Sorry, Jerry called me on the other line. Can you imagine, he wrote down my number incorrectly? Bridget was so happy that she wanted to tell the whole world this amazing story, in her opinion. And where did you get my number from? You drowned your phone, didn't you? And yes, you wanted to ask something. Yeah. Duncan's voice sounded slightly confused. Sorry for bombarding you with all this information. He chuckled. But there's something I wanted to ask you. Well, I really liked your friend, Destiny. And since you and my brother are going to dinner, then. A double date. Bridget screamed and jumped in place. Of course, that's a great plan. I'll arrange everything. You called at the perfect time, Duncan. That's wonderful. Thank you. You're welcome. I'll write you the details. Well, bye. Surprisingly, Destiny didn't immediately agree to this plan. She hesitated for a long time but eventually gave in, hearing genuine disappointment in her friend's voice. Jerry, too, didn't seem thrilled about the idea but went along with Bridget. Don't you understand that we can contribute to the happiness of this couple? Bridget said convincingly as her final argument, and Jerry reluctantly agreed. During dinner, Duncan entertained everyone as usual. Jerry seemed a bit tense, and Bridget was starting to regret coming up with all of this. It would have been much better to arrange a separate date because she really wanted to talk to Jerry alone. They exchanged interested glances sneakily and felt like school kids. When all four of them left the restaurant, Bridget let out a relieved sigh. I suggest we split up and escort our ladies, she proposed. Jerry looked at Bridget tenderly. I have no objections, the girl smiled, feeling a shiver from his candid gaze. Thanks, everyone, for the dinner, guys. Destiny, well, we'll see you soon, Bridget said. Destiny nodded shyly and turned to Duncan. He gallantly bowed. After bidding farewell, the couples went their separate ways. Well, what do you think? Bridget asked when she and Jerry turned onto a quiet alley. Will anything work out between Duncan and Destiny? The man stopped and turned Bridget toward him by the shoulders. He leaned in and gently brushed away a stray light strand of hair from her face with his finger, then softly pressed his lips against hers. Bridget immediately responded to the kiss, feeling no awkwardness or embarrassment. It was a completely new sensation for her. For a while, they passionately kissed under the canopy of aging linden trees like teenagers. Finally, Bridget pulled away and asked, "So, what question is bothering you?" Jerry pulled the girl closer to him and gazed at her intently. His gray eyes looked serious, but playful sparks danced in the depths of his pupils. Bridget, as if hypnotized, couldn't tear her gaze away from those eyes. No more questions. As for Duncan and Destiny, I think they'll figure things out on their own. But as for you and me, I'm now absolutely sure that we'll make it work. And the young couple embraced in another kiss. Bridget and Jerry's romance was developing rapidly. Now that their work at the branch was finished, Jerry could spend much more time with his beloved. Moreover, the atmosphere at Bridget's workplace had become calmer. At the end of the day, Jerry usually met the girl at the publishing house's exit, and they would go for dinner or to the movies. Sometimes they would simply take long walks in the park, surrounded by trees gradually losing their leaves. Destiny often called her friend, telling her about the unique ways in which Duncan courted her. Initially, she had been skeptical about having a relationship with the playful Duncan. However, it seemed that she liked him more and more. Besides, Jerry's brother had also found common ground with Quentin during his time at the hospital, and for Destiny, that was one of the main criteria for choosing a life partner. Meanwhile, Bridget discovered more and more of the qualities in Jerry that attracted her. Initially, she thought her strong attraction to this man stemmed from him being her savior in an extreme situation. But over time, Bridget realized that she had fallen in love with Jerry himself, not just the idea of a superhero. After 6 months, Jerry proposed to Bridget. The very next day, Destiny called to announce that she and Duncan had decided to get married. Seriously? Bridget exclaimed into the phone. Does this mean we'll be getting married at the same time? Yes. How wonderful, Bridget. These brothers seem to be competing to see who can propose faster. Let's decide on the dates somehow. We shouldn't have our weddings on the same day, right? That's what I think. Why not? Bridget suddenly pondered, biting her lip. After all, we'll become one family anyway, so let's have a joint wedding. The girls discussed the details and concluded that it would be even more interesting that way. Bridget only had a few relatives, her mother who lived thousands of kilometers away, and her aunt, her mother's sister. Jerry's and Duncan's parents had passed away several years ago, and Destiny had grown up in an orphanage without knowing anything about her own family. A wedding. So, it will be an intimate affair, it seems. Minimal guests, so we won't go overboard, Bridget contemplated. The main thing is beautiful music and having our loved ones by our side. I've already had one wedding, with another orphan, in the same orphanage where we grew up, Destiny said. That's why I don't see the point in having a grand celebration this time. I won't be buying a full-fledged wedding dress either. Look at me, a bride with a 3-year-old child by my side. Before Jerry and Bridget's wedding, they talked a lot and shared stories about their past lives. It was during this time that Bridget learned about her future husband's difficult history. Jerry was born into a prosperous and close-knit family. His parents worked for the government and enjoyed many privileges that were not accessible to ordinary people at the time. In the early 1990s, when Jerry was just a little boy, his father, sensing the changing times, ventured into private business. Together with his wife, they privatized the property they had inherited from the state, and the head of the family successfully acquired a factory that produced aerosol products. Unlike many businessmen of that time, he didn't sell off the factory's assets. On the contrary, he invested in it, purchased new equipment, and modernized the production process. The family wanted for nothing. Jerry's childhood was a happy one. Jerry's father brought his wife's brother, who had previously worked as a simple village teacher, into the business. The uncle and his family moved to Jerry's hometown and happily engaged in their new occupation. Warm relationships prevailed among the relatives. Jerry's father never acted as if he were the boss. It was a rare case where working together didn't ruin family relationships. The upbringing of both the uncle and his wife played a role. They were modest individuals who were raised on the noble ideals of friendship and support. Jerry's parents acquired a large plot of land and began building a house. During that time, it was trendy among the emerging businessmen to have country estates. Huge houses made of red brick, resembling fortresses, were being constructed. Jerry's mother became so passionate about the idea of having their own mansion that she would spend almost entire days at the construction site, supervising the workers and coming up with new projects. The woman would start with a swimming pool, then a rooftop loft that hadn't been built yet, then an alpine hill, and even a mushroom breeding farm. She had various plans in mind. On one unfortunate day, Jerry's parents went to their property. His mother was eager to show her husband the latest addition. They didn't return in the evening. Jerry, who was left under the care of his uncle's wife, Aunt Judy, never saw his parents again. Their bodies were found 2 days later in a pit dug for the future swimming pool. The culprits were quickly identified: the guard of the cottage community where their property was located and his intoxicated friend. It's a completely ordinary situation with a murder. A couple of drunk homeless people needed an extra fix, but they didn't have any money. They set out to search for properties where there would usually be no one at night and stumbled upon the owners of one of the estates, Jerry's parents. My father got upset, a fight broke out, and it escalated into a massacre, Jerry recounted with bitter irony. During that time, many businessmen met their end in fights and power struggles. But my father was lucky. He managed to establish contacts even with the most hardened criminals. And he met such a senseless death at the hands of 2 alcoholics. That's how I became an orphan. Wait, Bridget struggled to hold back tears throughout the story. She felt immense pain for the little boy Jerry once was when he lost his parents. What about Duncan? You said your parents died a few years ago, not in the 90s. Duncan is my cousin, the son of that very uncle who used to be a village teacher. When I was left alone, Uncle Cliff took me into his family. He and Aunt Judy considered me their son, on equal footing with Duncan. We were both their sons, you know? So I genuinely consider them my parents. Besides, I have very vague memories of my biological father and mother. I was 6 when they died. The memories have faded almost completely. I remember the warmth of my mother's hands, I remember my father's deep voice. But their faces are always blurry, like in a fog. Even when I look at photos, I can't recall what it's like to be their son. After assuming guardianship of his nephew, Uncle Cliff took over the management of the business. He didn't possess the same firmness and business acumen as Jerry's father, but the business remained afloat thanks to the system established by its founder. When Jerry turned 18, Uncle Cliff called him for a conversation. He told me it was time to make a decision, Jerry told his fiancée. I had to figure out my own future and the future of the business. It's all yours and only yours, Jerry. If you want, you can continue the family business. If you want, you can sell it or start your own venture. After some thought, Jerry decided not to shut down the production. At least not until he figured out what he wanted from life. Duncan enrolled in medical college. I, too, had dreams of saving people, but I didn't want to become a doctor. I joined the rescue service. Looking at you and your brother, it seems quite the opposite, Bridget remarked. You seem more like a doctor, and Duncan seems like a rescuer. Yes, many people think that, Jerry smiled. But things turned out the way they did. I completed college, worked in the field for 4 years. While rescuing people, I suddenly realized that I wanted something more, you know. You pull someone out of the fire or from under rubble, provide first aid, and that's it. Their fate remains a mystery to you. It's like leaving unfinished business halfway through. One day, Duncan and I decided to meet up at a bar. By that time, he was already the head of the trauma department in one of the hospitals and was about to take on a leadership role in a hospital. He preferred management over direct medical practice. Well, I proposed selling the production and investing the proceeds in establishing our own clinic with a focus on trauma recovery. Diagnosis included, of course. Duncan agreed to join me. That's how we started our own venture, which interested both of us. In our clinics, we have the best equipment. We perform complex orthopedic and plastic surgeries, and we also have the most advanced physiotherapy methods. Our patients have a chance for full recovery after severe injuries. Besides paying patients, we also help those in need free of charge. So, morally, my work completely satisfies me. And we have enough means to sustain our lives. The death of our parents was a big blow for Duncan and me. They passed away one after the other. First, our father Cliff fell ill and quickly passed away, and then our mother Anya couldn't bear to live without him and faded away within a few days. She didn't complain about anything, her health was fine. She simply didn't want to live without him. Bridget embraced her fiancé fervently. She knew the pain of loss all too well. Her father drowned while fishing many years ago, but the loss still resonated as a sharp pain in her chest. But we don't despair, my dear, Jerry held his bride close. You see, we hold on to each other tightly. We even decided to marry our best friends. Where else would you see that? Duncan has always been my closest friend. Even when we were studying at different universities, we stayed in touch constantly. We hung out in the same group. I really admire your relationship, Bridget smiled. You seem to complement each other. Duncan is open and loud, while you are mysterious and enigmatic. The girl laughed. Finally, the wedding day arrived. Both brides looked enchanting. Petite Bridget chose a flowing, lightweight dress that accentuated the alluring curves of her figure. She pinned up her light hair, leaving a few strands loose. Next to the statuesque Jerry, she looked like a precious porcelain doll. Destiny left her magnificent dark curls loose, with her long legs exposed. Her wedding attire consisted of a slim skirt and a fitted jacket. Duncan proudly gazed at his vibrant and beautiful bride. The couple joyfully celebrated their wedding, and each pair embarked on their new married life. Duncan adopted Quentin and happily took on the role of raising his stepson. He seemed perfectly suited for the role of a father. As a result, Destiny didn't keep him waiting, and within a year, she gave her husband a daughter, little Dory. Bridget, on the other hand, couldn't conceive, which weighed heavily on her. Jerry, of course, reassured his wife as best he could, but the girl was troubled. Countless examinations revealed no abnormalities. Just let go of that thought and live calmly, doctors advised. You are a young, healthy woman, and it will happen for you. At first, Bridget didn't listen, but then, realizing that she had come to a definitive point regarding childbirth, she decided not to dwell on it, imagining that she was releasing a vibrant bird from its cage. Years went by, and the brothers' business flourished. Clinics were opening in many cities across the country. Jerry wholeheartedly invested in the cause of his life. He successfully organized a large number of surgeries and procedures for patients who couldn't afford private treatment. In the main office, there was a display with drawings and cards from children who had been helped free of charge in their clinics. Bridget was genuinely proud of her beloved husband and what he did, but lately, an unexplainable anxiety had settled in her soul, accompanied by a sense of something unpleasant. Sometimes at night, she would wake up drenched in cold sweat and sit in bed for a long time, trying to catch her breath. It seemed like someone was watching her from outside. She dismissed these strange thoughts and even contemplated starting therapy with a psychologist. Jerry's behavior also caused her to worry. I feel like something is happening. Bridget sat in the spacious kitchen of Destiny and Duncan's house. Jerry hasn't been himself lately, Destiny. But maybe it's a midlife crisis, Destiny speculated, pouring coffee for her friend. The anniversary is approaching, 40 years. And many guys start going crazy. I don't know, Destiny. He's so distant. He's absorbed in his thoughts. He feels like a stranger. When I ask, he says everything is fine. But I can see that it's not. He's always been a bit reserved, but now it's like he's Count Dracula. It's all so strange. What are you gossiping about, ladies? Duncan entered the kitchen, kissed his wife on the back of her head, and sat at the table. Thinking about what to give Jerry for his anniversary? What do you think, Bridget? The woman startled. Oh, by the way. I don't even have a rough idea of what to give someone who has everything. Destiny, what do you think? She became pensive. Maybe new watches or a laptop? That's a bit boring, Bridget replied. Okay, there's still time, and I'll think about it. She peeked into the children's room, said goodbye to the kids, and lost in thought, headed back to her own home. A couple of years ago, she and Jerry had moved from an apartment to a small house on the outskirts of the city. Of course, their cozy den couldn't compare to the grand mansion where Destiny and Duncan lived. But Bridget didn't want the unnecessary space. She cherished her home, the garden, the gazebo, the small pond, and her yellow floppy-eared dog, Cooper, who pretended to guard the property. Bridget patted Cooper on his big head. He lazily licked his owner's hand and went back to sleep. The woman smiled and stepped inside the partially open door. She could hear her husband's voice coming from the living room. I don't know, but we need to see it through to the end, even if it's like that, take action. Bridget heard it. She became alert and silently walked closer to the room where Jerry was. But he had already finished the conversation and was now pacing the living room, nervously rubbing his forehead. Jerry, is something wrong with you? Bridget noticed how her husband flinched at the sound of her voice. Her heart filled with anxious anticipation. Jerry was clearly hiding something from her. Hey, sweetheart, everything's fine, her husband pulled Bridget towards him and kissed her tenderly. I was just talking about work. Don't worry about it. Jerry, I can see that you're not yourself. What's going on? Yeah, I told you everything's fine. I just have to go away for a couple of weeks. You know how much I dislike leaving you alone. Go away? Where? Bridget grew wary. Do you want me to come with you? No, I mean, of course, I'd be happy if you came, but it's too far away. And the conditions are far from resort-like, to put it mildly. Remember, we were planning to open a special clinic in Alaska? It's called Bear's Corner. There's no communication there, let alone minimal comfort. At least until the clinic is built. Bridget sighed. Her husband had been harboring the idea of Alaska for a long time. Duncan wasn't thrilled about the prospects of an unprofitable project. Primarily, the clinic was intended for patients receiving free assistance, so there were no expected profits from the branch. Bridget dreaded the thought of Jerry going somewhere. Lately, her strange anxiety had intensified. Nightmarish dreams visited her every day. Sometimes Bridget felt like she could sense an unfriendly gaze upon her. But you'll be back before your birthday, right? She clarified. I promise, Jerry kissed his wife on the nose. Well, it's time for me to get ready. And tonight, I suggest we have dinner at that lovely restaurant on the waterfront. Remember? All right, I'll make a reservation. Bridget forced a tense smile and watched her departing husband. She could literally feel the tension in her spine. He was definitely hiding something. Jerry flew off to Fairbanks, and Bridget started contemplating the gift. She wanted to come up with something special. After all, a milestone anniversary doesn't happen so often. She called her friend. Destiny, are you free today? I want to visit a little shop and look for a gift for Jerry. No problem, let's meet in the city center. Thank you, Destiny. It's a deal. Bridget never learned how to drive, so she called a taxi. Arriving at her destination, she stepped out of the car and closed her eyes. It was the end of May. The sun was blinding, and the air was filled with the intoxicating scent of lilacs. Bridget involuntarily remembered how Jerry brought her a bouquet of lilacs in September. Oh, it felt like it was just yesterday. Bridget, Destiny ran across the street to her. What are you daydreaming about? Oh, just reminiscing about my youth, Bridget smiled. You can say that again. Destiny laughed. And now, what, you're old. Experienced, dear, and wise. You're an interesting one, Destiny chuckled and pulled her friend along the street. The women were heading towards a small antique shop that had recently opened in their town. While browsing through the tightly packed shelves, Bridget pondered what her husband might like. He didn't care for weapons, so antique swords and sabers were out of the question. He didn't have any vices either, so ashtrays, pipes, and lighters weren't suitable. Suddenly, Bridget stopped. Her attention was drawn to a men's bracelet made of braided leather and gold. Jerry didn't like jewelry, although he habitually wore a pendant with his rescue service details around his neck. But this bracelet. It looked so masculine. Bridget could almost see her husband's sinewy, strong hand wrapped in the leather cords and weathered gold. She decisively approached the elderly shopkeeper behind the counter. "Hello, I would like to buy this trinket," she pointed to the display. "Can you have it engraved?" "Of course. Please fill out the card with the text. You can pick up the bracelet in 2 days." Radiant, Bridget paid and tugged Destiny's arm, who had gotten absorbed in browsing through the antique books. "Let's go, I made my choice." "Oh, what? Did you buy something?" "You'll see at the celebration. Let it be a surprise for you too, my friend." Destiny rolled her eyes but obediently followed Bridget. "I'll need to stop by the tailor's as well. Are you coming with me, or will you go?" "No, of course not. Besides, I might end up staying there for a while." The women said their goodbyes. Destiny headed towards the pedestrian crossing, while Bridget called a taxi and sat on a bench in a small square. Her vision was slightly blurred, but the dizziness was subsiding. She wanted to get home as quickly as possible and stand under the cool shower. Once again, an unpleasant feeling arose that someone was watching her. She closed her eyes and tried to calm herself down. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sharp ringtone, indicating the arrival of the taxi. Bridget perked up and began searching for the car with her gaze. Next to the exit of the square, there was a white car with the logo of a local transportation company parked. She glanced at the phone she held in her hand, stood up, and leisurely walked towards the car. In the taxi, Bridget dozed off again, and when she arrived, she instinctively reached for her purse to get the keys to the door. "Oh no!" she groaned loudly. The taxi driver looked at her in the rearview mirror with surprise. "I'm sorry, but I urgently need to go back to where you picked me up." "What happened?" "Yes, I seem to have left my purse on the bench. It's a disaster. It has my keys, wallet, and my husband is away on a business trip right now." Bridget felt like crying. "Don't worry. We'll get there quickly." The man turned the car around and headed back. Running out of the taxi, Bridget rushed to the bench where she had been sitting before, but the purse was nowhere to be seen. She looked around. Slightly diagonally from the bench, there was a tiny stall selling sweet cotton candy. The vendor seemed bored. "Excuse me," Bridget ran up to the stall. "Did you happen to see where my purse went? I literally left it here 20 minutes ago. It's small and beige." The vendor pondered for a moment. "There weren't many people here today, but I didn't see any purse. To be honest, I was constantly looking at my phone." "Maybe I just didn't notice," the woman sympathetically looked at Bridget. "Maybe someone took it." Bridget sighed in disappointment. It was foolish to hope that the purse would patiently wait for her on the bench. Thankfully, she had her phone with her. She dialed Destiny's number. "Hello, are you still at the tailor's?" Bridget asked. "Don't go anywhere. I'll be there soon." Looking around once more, Bridget walked towards the pedestrian crossing, recalling what was in her purse besides the wallet. It was fortunate that Destiny and Duncan had a spare key, otherwise, they would have to call a locksmith, break the door, and change the locks. A couple of hours later, after receiving a lecture on her carelessness and retrieving her keys, Bridget returned home. She quickly shed her clothes and stepped into a hot shower. Her legs were tingling, and nausea was creeping up her throat. "I won't let myself get upset," the woman repeated to herself. "I only need positive emotions." After drinking some tea, Bridget collapsed onto the bed and instantly fell asleep. She was awakened by the sound of her mobile ringing. Squinting from the sunlight that seeped into the bedroom through the undrawn curtains, she looked at the screen, hoping it was her husband calling. But the number was unfamiliar. "Hello," she answered, taking the call. "Hello, are you Bridget?" A pleasant male voice came through the receiver. "Yes, it's me. The thing is, I found a purse in the square yesterday. There was a business card inside." "Oh, it's a miracle." Bridget got up from the bed. "I had already given up hope." The stranger chuckled. "How can I thank you? And how can I retrieve it?" "Well, let's meet at the same place where you left the purse." "There's no need to thank me, I'm just returning your belongings." "Will 2 p.m. be convenient for you?" "Of course, thank you." Bridget hung up and happily headed to the kitchen to put the kettle on. She tried calling her husband, but Jerry's phone had been unreachable for 2 days now. Well, he did warn her that it would be the case. She just really wanted to hear his voice, complain about her own absent-mindedness, and receive some support. Bridget arrived at the designated place ahead of time. She nervously paced around the square, looking around. By 2:30, she realized that no one was coming. She dialed the phone number from which the stranger had called several times, but the subscriber was out of range. After waiting for another hour, Bridget sighed and called a taxi. Suddenly, a shiver ran down her spine. That feeling again, as if someone was drilling into her with their gaze. She turned around abruptly but saw no one. Upon returning home, Bridget called her husband again. There was no answer. With a sigh, she dialed Duncan's number, but his phone was switched off as well. Pondering for a moment, she went to the kitchen to make tea. In the sink, she noticed Jerry's favorite mug. Bridget stared at it in confusion. She distinctly remembered not leaving any dirty dishes behind. The woman was hit with an icy cold sensation. Her purse. The house keys were in there. She spun around abruptly, as if expecting to find a robber standing behind her with a knife. Seeing no one, Bridget slowly walked through the house, peeking into every room. Fear paralyzed her body and made it difficult to breathe. The woman reached for her phone again. Destiny. Oh my God, Bridget. What happened? Why do you sound like that? Destiny, I'm scared. Can I come over to your place? Yes, of course, come over. Are you okay? There was genuine concern in her friend's voice. Seems like it, but I don't know. Rushing out onto the street, Bridget hailed a taxi. She didn't want to go back inside. The house held danger within it. You're as pale as a ghost, Destiny greeted her at the gate. Come in quickly. I'll make some coffee. Bridget hugged Destiny and let out a sigh. Here, she could relax a bit. No need for coffee. And where's Duncan? He left yesterday, said he had to go to that new branch. To Alaska? You're not in touch with him either? Bridget rubbed her hands, which had grown cold again. Yes, he called from the airport, said we won't be able to talk for a few days. What about you, what happened? Bridget didn't want to talk about her fears. It seemed like if she put them into words, they would become reality, but there was no other way. Listen, Destiny, I don't know. Lately, I feel like someone is watching me. And the purse. Some man called and said he found it, but he didn't show up for the meeting. And at home, I just have this feeling that someone was there. What do you mean? Did someone break into your house? I'm not sure about anything. Remember when I told you that Jerry started acting strange? Well, that's when this strange feeling started for me. Wait, maybe I'm just being paranoid. Destiny sighed and walked around the kitchen. Listen, I didn't tell you, but Duncan has changed too. I think they have some business problems. He's been nervous, snapping at Quentin, not paying attention to Dora. Duncan? Are you serious? He's such a positive person. Destiny let out a bitter smile. That's how it seems from the outside, Bridget. I've been living with him all these years, and I know what he can be like. But I love him and accept him for who he is. Lately, all his unpleasant traits have just surfaced more. Destiny, you never told me. But why should I talk about our domestic disagreements? The women fell silent. Bridget's phone chimed. She opened the message and froze. What's in there? Destiny looked worriedly at her friend's changed expression. Bridget silently handed her smartphone to Destiny, who read it aloud. Save me, please. Oh my God, who is this from? It's the same number from which the man who found my purse called. The women exchanged glances. That's it. We need to do something. Our men have their own dark dealings, but that doesn't mean we have to tremble in fear here. Destiny decisively grabbed her phone and started searching through her contacts. I'll call Larry. He's the head of the company's security department. He said we can turn to him if something happens. Suddenly, the woman blushed slightly, which didn't go unnoticed by Bridget. Destiny. What's up with you? Who is this Larry that makes you blush like a maiden at a wedding? Stop it. Destiny huffed in annoyance. He can just help, and she dialed the phone number. Hello, Larry. It's Destiny. Yes, I need some assistance, and Duncan is currently away on a business trip. Please write down the address. I'll be there in a while. Can you come as well? Huh. All right, thank you. It would be quite interesting to meet this Larry. Even your voice has changed, Bridget squinted at her. Destiny just waved her off. Let's go, I'll let the nanny know. We'll meet Larry at your house. The women quickly arrived at the location. Bridget couldn't bring herself to go inside. Her beloved home had suddenly turned into something dangerous, and it made her want to cry. Destiny started playing with the dog, Cooper. Bridget nervously paced in front of the porch. Finally, the sound of tires could be heard from the street. Destiny jumped up and headed to open the gate. A fit man with early graying hair entered the yard. Bridget couldn't hide the warmth she felt when his gaze rested on Destiny. Well. Bridget marveled silently. Hello, Mrs. Long. What happened to you? He noticed Bridget and greeted her too. Mrs. Edwards, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, you can just call me Bridget. The woman briefly outlined the problem, stumbling over each word. As she voiced her fears to this composed and stern man, it all seemed incredibly foolish. However, Larry didn't dismiss Bridget's fears. On the contrary, he furrowed his brow and nodded when Bridget finished her story. Well, your story raises concerns. First, let me inspect the house. Unfortunately, I don't have any equipment with me, but I'll do what I can. While Larry carefully examined the entrance locks, Bridget approached Destiny and decided to speak up. And how should I interpret this? I saw how he looked at you. I saw it too, Destiny whispered in response. But what can I do? Apparently, I'm to his liking. That's putting it mildly. He's in love with you, Destiny. Leave it alone. I won't. In the meantime, Larry went inside the house. The women hesitantly followed. Instead of the usual calmness of Bridget's familiar nest, she once again felt a dangerous and icy coldness. After going around the house, Larry returned to the women. Well, at first glance, nothing unusual, but it's better to be safe. Bridget, do you have the possibility to stay somewhere else for now? She does. Destiny replied on Bridget's behalf. And what are our next steps? First, I'll try to find out whose phone number this is that sent you the message. I suspect it's a generated one, but we need to verify that. One of my employees will stay here tonight just in case someone shows up. And you wait for now. If this person, Larry nodded toward the phone in Bridget's hands, contacts you again, inform me immediately, anytime. Agreed. Bridget and Destiny nodded in sync. After bidding farewell to Larry, the friends headed home to Destiny's place. Throughout the journey, Bridget remained pensive and silent. But as soon as they crossed the threshold of the house, she bombarded her friend with questions. You have to explain to me, where did this Larry with his radiant gaze and velvety voice come from all of a sudden? Don't tell me you're tired of Duncan. Destiny took off her shoes and adjusted her unruly curls in the mirror. After 2 childbirths, her slender figure had hardly changed, except for a slightly curve of her slim hips and softer edges to her sharp shoulders. At almost 40 years old, she looked stunning. That's why Bridget fully understood why the head of security couldn't take his eyes off her friend. Bridget herself always considered her appearance to be simple. Yes, being a slender blonde was always a winning combination, but she felt that her looks lacked vibrant colors. Nevertheless, Jerry always admired his wife passionately and openly, so Bridget never had to worry. Meanwhile, Destiny brewed some tea and sat down on the couch with a cup. I'm not tired of Duncan. You know how I've always felt about him. He gave me a smile, you know. But something broke in the past year. He became aggressive and constantly nitpicks. He allows himself harsh criticism. What do you mean? Bridget sat down across from her friend. Well, for example, a couple of months ago, he claimed that I let myself go. Can you imagine? That I've gained weight and don't take care of my appearance. Bridget widened her eyes. But you don't have an ounce of extra weight. And you look simply enchanting. Destiny took a sip from her teacup and placed it on the table. You know, if I were a little less confident, I might have reacted differently to his words. But believe me, I know how I look. And I know that there's nothing to reproach myself for. So I told my husband that his words were completely groundless accusations, nothing more. And I reminded him that over the years of our life together, it's actually him who acquired a beer belly and a bald spot on top. Bridget snorted, almost choking on her tea. And him, Bridget, he caused a grand scandal and left home for a week. Yes, you can stop looking at me with those big surprised eyes. So, he left and turned off his phone. I'm not panicking, but I was still worried about him. That's why I came to the main office to find out if he's okay. That's where I met Larry. I told him that I urgently needed to talk to my husband and that my phone was broken. I think he didn't believe me, but I did manage to talk to Duncan then. He started hurling accusations at me again, and I left. And Larry said that if anything happens, I can reach out to him. That's the whole story. Yes, I see how he looks at me. But what can I do? Blindfold him? Wait. Duncan. How did you reconcile in the end? We didn't, Bridget. He just came back. Came back a few days later as if nothing had happened. He brought lilies, which I'm allergic to, Destiny smirked. From the outside, it seems like we have a perfect family. In reality, well, I'm not complaining. I don't know, Bridget, where everything is heading, but I'll take it as it is. I probably haven't matured enough for a divorce yet. But if nothing changes, I definitely won't live with someone who doesn't appreciate me. Bridget shook her head in disbelief. I never even considered that. How is this possible? It's not worth worrying about. The main thing is that you're doing well. Are you, right? Bridget pondered for a moment. Well, I've already mentioned that Jerry has become more distant, now I don't know what to think. Let's distract ourselves then. Bridget, I suggest ordering pizza, drinking wine, and watching something funny and lighthearted. Sure, let's do that, but only wine. I don't want anything making me queasy. No problem. I have some fruit punch. The friends spent the evening carefree. Quentin and little Dory joined them, ensuring laughter and a cheerful mood. Closer to midnight, Bridget went to the guest room and climbed into the soft bed, but sleep eluded her. Once again, she dialed her husband's number, listened to the mechanical voice informing her that the subscriber was unavailable, and angrily hung up. She lay there, staring at the ceiling, and thought about what she had learned today. Jerry never mentioned anything about a brother. They had a great relationship. Bridget pondered. Over the years, she had become so accustomed to Duncan that she saw him as a very close relative. But now, unwanted memories began to invade her mind. She suddenly remembered several episodes when she or her husband caught Duncan's very attentive and penetrating gaze, but whenever Bridget noticed that gaze, Duncan would immediately smile and look away. At the time, it didn't seem suspicious, but now, everything had turned upside down. What is Duncan hiding? The problems in her friend's family were certainly bad, but now it was much more important to find out who was watching her, Bridget, and whether anyone was watching at all. Who sent that strange message? Whom does she need to help? Bridget abruptly got out of bed. Horrible thoughts pierced her mind. What if it was Jerry? Jerry, who hadn't been in touch for several days. What if something happened to him? And how could she find out? How could she know? The silence of the night was shattered by a loud message alert. Bridget trembled and started to retrieve her smartphone from the folds of the blanket. Save me. I'm running out of time. The woman covered her mouth with her hand to stifle a scream. She rushed out of the room, flung open the door to Destiny's bedroom. Her friend was peacefully reading a book under the light of a desk lamp. Why are you so scared? He messaged again. Destiny, what if it's Jerry? What if they're holding him hostage, my Jerry? Calm down. Destiny got out of bed, approached her friend, took her by the shoulders, and shook her gently. Jerry is in Alaska, remember? But what if he isn't? What if they abducted him on the way to the airport? Bridget, I know your husband very well. He would never write to you and put himself in danger, even if he were taken hostage. This is some kind of trap. I'll call Larry right now. While her friend talked to the head of the security department, Bridget sat on the chair near the vanity table. She was trembling uncontrollably, her teeth chattering. Meanwhile, another message arrived on Bridget's phone. Industrial Zone, 16. Bridget jumped. Destiny, he sent an address. Destiny had just finished her call and took the phone from her frightened friend. Wow, she exclaimed. That's quite a place. It's all warehouses there. How do you know? Bridget asked in surprise. Forgot that I used to work in real estate before maternity leave, huh? I once sold a property there. An industrial zone consists of abandoned factories and huge warehouse spaces. So, don't panic. Larry will be here soon, and I'll wake up the nanny. I'm not letting you go alone. Are you jealous? Bridget, you find time for silly jokes even in such a situation. The women went downstairs to the kitchen. Bridget nervously tapped her fingers on the table, while Destiny calmly prepared coffee. Finally, Larry arrived. He quickly read the message and pondered. Yes, this is definitely some kind of trap. Someone really wants you to go to one of the most remote and dangerous areas of the city in the middle of the night. But I have to. Bridget exclaimed. She thinks Jerry was taken hostage, Larry confidentially informed Destiny. He looked at Bridget strangely and shook his head. No, that's impossible. I can assure you that the boss is fine. Bridget squinted her eyes. Do you know something? Just what I said. Nobody kidnapped Jerry. The woman paced around the kitchen and stopped in front of Larry. We must go there. The man shook his head. It's too dangerous. Then I'll go alone. Bridget stubbornly stared at her interlocutor. Destiny set her coffee cup down and sighed wearily. Unfortunately, we won't be able to dissuade her. Larry, we'll have to go. The man turned to Destiny, and his gaze instantly became warm. Destiny. But you definitely stay home. Oh, yes, of course. No way. I won't let you go alone. Bridget couldn't help but snort, immediately catching her friend's disapproving look. Larry called his assistant, while the women prepared themselves. Finally, all three got into the car of the head of the security department. Please, no improvisation. It's very important to follow my instructions, Larry instructed the women along the way. Yes, we understand, Destiny waved it off nonchalantly. Don't worry, everything will be fine. They stopped near a long building resembling a factory workshop. Larry, illuminating the path with a thin flashlight, cautiously entered. The women followed him closely. In the vast empty room, quiet footsteps echoed sharply. Bridget shivered, realizing belatedly that this was indeed some kind of trap. If something happened to them, they would never be found here. Although Larry had called someone, help might come too late. They should have waited for backup. A faint, prolonged sound came from the depths of the room. The trio froze as if on cue. The sound repeated. "That's a groan." "A groan," Bridget whispered. The trio hurried toward the sound. In the far wall, there was a partially open, peeling door. Larry pushed it quickly and immediately recoiled. After a brief pause, he entered a small room that appeared to have once been a shed. The man flicked the light switch, and surprisingly, a dim bulb lit up under the ceiling. In the middle of the room, a young, slender girl was tied to a chair. Her mouth was taped shut, and her hands were bound behind her back. Larry swiftly scanned the room before approaching the girl and roughly tearing the tape off her face. She immediately began sobbing, trying to say something through her tears. Meanwhile, Bridget inspected the room. The first thing that caught her eye was a jacket hanging on the chair. It was undoubtedly one of Jerry's jackets. The thing was, her husband always used the services of one of the city's oldest tailors. He rarely wore business suits and always ordered them from that very tailor. The jacket looked slightly unconventional, with a stand-up collar, and the tailor always embroidered the owner's monogram with initials inside. Bridget saw that exact monogram. "Oh my God," she whispered. "I don't understand anything at all." "Call the police," the girl tied to the chair cried. Destiny, on the other hand, looked at Larry in astonishment. He made no attempts to free the captive or call for help. There was undisguised antipathy in his gaze. "Destiny, this is Jerry's jacket. What's happening here? Who is this poor girl? Larry, please, help her." "Stop," Destiny suddenly said loudly. "Everyone, please be quiet." Taken aback, the captive stopped sobbing, and Bridget interrupted her stream of words. "Larry, do you know this girl?" Destiny stared intently at the man. He shrugged uncertainly and turned away. "Should we call the police, or is that a bad idea?" "We can call, but let's ask the girl first." Larry looked at the captive again. "Was it you who wrote the messages, Bridget?" he asked. "Yes," the girl burst into tears again. "That scoundrel dropped his phone, so I managed to send a message." "What scoundrel?" "He didn't tell me his name," the girl raised her chin. "Tall, skinny brunette." Larry rubbed his forehead with his hand. "And what's your name?" "Isabella." "Please, untie me already." "And where is the police?" "Listen, Isabella. Why didn't you call the police yourself?" The girl stopped crying and blinked in confusion. "I messaged her," she nodded towards Bridget. "Why did she come without the police? How did you write the message? Where is the phone you used?" Larry spoke softly, but irritation was evident in his voice. The girl lowered her gaze. "It's on the table. I wrote it with my nose. Isabella, I beg you. It's clear as day. Tell the truth." Destiny cautiously touched the man's sleeve, and he turned and looked at her affectionately. "Larry, we don't quite understand what's going on. Why are you talking to this girl like that? She's clearly a victim here." "Destiny, believe me, this is a real setup, and a very poorly organized one at that. Frankly, I didn't expect it to be so poorly executed." He addressed the captive. "Isabella, I'll call the police right away, but I want to warn you that contrary to stereotypes, they are not the idiots you think they are. They will quickly figure out what happened here. Are you ready to face charges as an accomplice to the crime?" The girl glared at everyone present with a malicious look. "Not ready." Her voice suddenly changed. "Where did you even come from, and why didn't that idiot come with a police escort? I don't understand. Isabella, either you engage in a dialogue with us, or we leave, leaving you here." Your accomplice will free you himself, and we'll make sure the authorities handle it this time. Are you ready to talk to us properly? I'm ready, the girl said. Just untie my hands, please. At that moment, several people in bulletproof vests entered the room. The perimeter is clear. I know, Larry waved them off. We had a complete amateur working here. Help free our captive, and let's go to the office to talk. Destiny, please wait with Bridget in the car. The man handed the keychain to the two friends, and the women obediently stepped out. I don't understand anything, absolutely nothing. Bridget complained. But Jerry's jacket was hanging on the chair. But I have no idea either, Destiny responded gloomily. How often does your Jerry wear jackets? If you think he kidnapped this girl, why would he do it in the most inconvenient outfit? I don't think so, Bridget said fearfully. What are you talking about? They're trying to frame your Jerry, that's what. And I'm really interested to know who exactly. Destiny suddenly turned to her friend. Her face distorted in despair. And I have a hunch, Bridget. I have a hunch about who, but I don't want to believe it. Bridget didn't have time to reply. The car door opened, and Larry appeared. Ladies, I think you've had enough excitement for today. I'll take you home, and tomorrow we'll all meet in the office. Don't even think about it, Destiny suddenly switched to using you informally. If you think any of us will sleep until everything is resolved, then you're just clueless, not understanding anything about women. Larry, seemingly unaffected by Destiny's rude outburst, smiled. How can I disobey the wife of my own boss? For some reason, those words only angered Destiny even more, and she abruptly turned away to look out the window. Then let's go to the office. It's going to be a sleepless night. Everyone remained silent during the journey. Bridget, despite her concerns, noticed the tension between her friend and the head of security. It somehow amused her greatly. Larry brought the women to a small conference room, where his employees had also brought the former captive, Isabella. Isabella looked irritated. Without waiting for any questions, she sat on the table and crossed her leg over the other. I'm ready to talk, but only if you pay for my services, she challenged Larry, looking directly at him. The man remained calm. What amount are we talking about? Isabella looked up at the ceiling. He promised to pay me $10,000. So, if he doesn't pay, you pay. $10,000 of what? Bridget clarified, shivering. Isabella literally looked at her with disdain. Dollars, of course. And the money up front. That's a substantial amount. I have to discuss it with my superiors. Please excuse me, Larry stepped away, leaving the woman under the supervision of one of his employees. With whom is Larry discussing it if Duncan and Jerry are in Alaska? Bridget whispered to Destiny, who only shrugged her shoulders vaguely. A few minutes later, Larry returned. Well, the amount is acceptable for us. Will a transfer to your personal account suffice? Isabella nodded. Please provide your details to our employee. Isabella spoke with the woman in a business suit for a while. Why are there employees here in the middle of the night? Bridget asked. We called them, Larry replied briefly, observing Isabella. Finally, all the formalities were settled, and the employee clicked the keys on her laptop and turned the screen towards the former captive. The transaction was successful. The money will be credited within the day. Well, then, we'll talk when the money arrives. Isabella crossed her arms over her chest. Larry approached the woman, leaning closer to her. Don't test my patience, don't push it. His voice was quiet but threatening. You got what you wanted. If you no longer wish to cooperate, we can always go the official route. Just say the word, and I'll call the police. Isabella calmed down slightly. All right, what do you want from me? Larry sat at the table and placed a voice recorder in front of him. Tell us who hired you and what your role was. The woman looked at Bridget with hostility. A bearded blonde man hired me. He wanted me to play the role of a kidnapping victim. Destiny paled abruptly and grabbed her friend's sleeve. Who is this man? Larry asked coldly, trying not to look at Destiny. He didn't give me his name. He's a big bearded guy. We agreed that I would sit tied up in this warehouse for a while, and when Bridget arrived, with the police, of course, I would give a statement. And that's it. First of all, Isabella, you're a very brave girl. You agreed so easily to be tied up by him, Larry remarked. Isabella's face elongated, such a scenario clearly hadn't crossed her mind. Secondly, Isabella, do you know what can happen if you provide false testimony? Well, everything was supposed to go smoothly. He promised me. All right, fine. Now, explain your plan in more detail. I was supposed to sit tied up, and when Bridget arrived, I was to cry, give a description of the criminal, and talk about how he tortured me. And that he left his phone behind, so I was able to contact the last number he called. Larry stood up and walked around the room. Let's get a detailed description of the criminal, he said. But I already told you, tall, big, with a beard. He sneered all the time, Isabella replied. Not that criminal who hired you, Isabella. Larry's patience was admirable. I'm talking about the person you were supposed to describe to the police. Oh. But he showed me a few photos, including one with her. She nodded towards Bridget. There was this handsome guy, like some actor. Well-built, wavy dark hair, gray eyes. He even let me listen to his voice so I could recognize it. That's the person I was supposed to describe. And his wife was supposed to immediately recognize her husband's belongings. There was a jacket, and in the pocket, there was an electronic pass to your office and some other small thing. Basically, all the evidence that would point to the right person, and I would confirm it during identification. He supposedly caught me, tortured me, then left me to die in an abandoned warehouse and flew to another city. That was the plan. Bridget fidgeted in place. It was unbearable for her to look at Destiny, who was clutching the armrest of her chair in a spasm. Isabella, you were sitting in the middle of the room, tied to a chair. How were you planning to explain to the police that you managed to send several messages from a phone? And mind you, a basic button phone that was lying on the table several meters away from your chair. I jumped up on the chair and used my nose to type the messages, Isabella replied. I see. And then you returned to your place. Have you ever tried pressing a button with your nose on a phone, let alone typing a message? Larry placed an old button phone on the table. Your story is so absurd that you should be grateful to Bridget for coming to me instead of going to the police. Bridget wouldn't have figured anything out. She immediately went for the jacket and forgot about everything else. And if she had gone through the pocket, she would have turned in her handsome husband to the police right away. Isabella looked at Bridget with hatred. But no, they had to go to an abandoned warehouse at night, not with armed police officers, but with another idiot like her friend, and some stranger. Where does all this animosity towards a woman you don't even know come from? Larry suddenly asked, seeking clarification. Isabella lifted her chin. Yes, because she's ugly, with a gloomy face and an ordinary figure, yet all these handsome guys are around her. Her husband is a handsome man, and he keeps talking about her non-stop. Bridget this, Bridget that. And here I am, young and attractive, she gestured towards herself, as if inviting admiration, and I keep encountering nothing but losers. And Bridget is living the high life, while I have to sit here bound and play the victim. That blonde guy with a beard, he didn't even look at me, as if I were invisible. Destiny jumped up and quickly walked over to the water cooler. She drank 2 glasses in one go and turned to Larry. So, am I understanding correctly that the bearded blonde guy behind all this is my husband? Larry, don't stay silent. I need to know. Larry sighed and nodded. Yes, that's right. I'm very sorry, Destiny. Don't pity me, please. I don't need your sympathy. The woman stormed out of the room. Bridget twitched to run after her, but Larry stopped her. Bridget. Let me handle this myself. He hurriedly followed after Destiny. Isabella examined Bridget, who shrank back. The girl clearly felt an irrational hatred. What did they find in you? What? Isabella suddenly asked. I don't understand. Jerry, the one you plan to frame, is my husband. Yes, he loves me, that happens. And it has nothing to do with looks. We are meant for each other if you can understand that. And as for Duncan, you're mistaken. There's nothing between us. He's my best friend's husband. Maybe you have nothing, then, Isabella sneered, but I saw perfectly well how he trembles with hatred for your Jerry and how he talks about you. So believe me, he's definitely hopelessly in love with you. I don't know what his motives were, but he wanted you, specifically, to find me and the evidence of your beloved husband's guilt. The whole idea was that if you don't see it with your own eyes, you won't believe he's guilty. Goosebumps ran down Bridget's body. She didn't want to believe what this girl was saying. But memories kept intruding into her mind. For example, the phone number that turned out to be incorrectly saved in Jerry's mobile phone, and how he skillfully tried to say something to her at the train station, then during the phone call, and those intense glances she sometimes caught on herself. But then why did he ask to be introduced to Destiny? What kind of completely irrational plan was this? The door swung open. Bridget stood up, ready to see Larry and Destiny, but Jerry walked into the room. Jerry, the woman pressed her palms to her cheeks. Oh my God, I'm so glad to see you. She rushed into her husband's arms. How did you come back so quickly? Sweetheart, calm down, you're just shaking. Relax, Jerry whispered while embracing his wife. I'll tell you everything. Just give me some time. There was some commotion in the room. Security personnel entered, discussing something with Jerry in hushed voices. Then a teary-eyed Destiny appeared accompanied by Larry. Bridget hesitated to approach her friend, and it seemed to her that after Isabella's words, Destiny despised her. Destiny approached on her own and took Bridget's hand. I know you have no part in this. Duncan is an idiot who messed things up and got tangled himself. I'm not angry, really. Both women turned at the sound. Duncan entered the room, red-faced and sweaty, being escorted by two sturdy guys from Larry's subordinates. He loudly protested, demanding to be left alone. He froze mid-sentence when his gaze met Isabella. Duncan's face contorted. So, what exactly is happening here? He asked in a sharp voice. Hello, Duncan. Jerry greeted politely as he approached. You better sit down, at my feet, because there's no truth to be found. Derry, what kind of circus are you guys staging here? Duncan smirked crookedly and ostentatiously sprawled in a chair. Is this some kind of prank? My own employees dragging me around like some criminal. Where are they dragging you from, dear? Destiny asked. From Fairbanks, I suppose? Duncan flinched almost imperceptibly but quickly regained his composure. The whole family is gathered. Isn't that something? So, what's this general meeting in honor of? I don't understand. You should know better, Destiny said disdainfully, looking at her smiling husband. Jerry winced in pain. It was clear that the whole situation was difficult for him. Duncan, let's not put on a theatrical performance, Jerry said. I went to Oakland to check some documents. At these words, Duncan's face turned red. He straightened himself slowly. And what does this have to do with me? He asked, tapping his fingers on the table. Well, if you want me to say it specifically, then here you go. All your manipulations with supplies, paid patients, fake invoices, they have all come to light, Duncan. I just can't understand one thing. We both received absolutely identical and quite substantial dividends as equal partners. What were you lacking? Why did you need to undermine our company and essentially steal from your own pocket? A mocking smile appeared on Duncan's face. Equal partners. And why did you feel the need to investigate me? Yes, the branch director approached me. They had a routine audit, during which questions arose. Or did you think that just because our business is private, it doesn't need to be checked? We absolutely don't need any problems with the tax authorities. So tell me, dear brother, why did you start all this? Duncan jumped up. One of the guards immediately moved towards him, but Larry signaled not to act yet. You were always involved in charity, Jerry. Our profits could have been many times greater if the clinics didn't take in such a large number of free patients. If you're content with living at half strength, I'm not interested. I want more. I want to live luxuriously without worrying about trivial matters. I want to be able to buy a house or a car the moment the thought crosses my mind, without having to save for years. And such an opportunity would have been possible if you weren't so kind. Jerry wearily slumped onto one of the chairs. Duncan, why can't you just tell the truth? I know that it's not only about your desire to play the millionaire but also because you got into debt. Duncan looked at his brother with disdain. Debts. I wanted to finally get rid of your eternal supervision, your noble impulses, and your plans to save the world. I wanted to start my own business and make money, not treat every beaten and wretched person like a kind doctor. That's the government's job, not private enterprise, understand? If you want to know my opinion, Jerry, although it never really concerned you. Wait. But you could have talked to me, sold your share to me, and peacefully pursued your own business, something that only you understand. But you chose to get involved with some shady investors, burn out, and end up in this situation. Isn't that right, Duncan? Sell, give away my share to you, Duncan laughed theatrically. Once again, it's your feigned nobility, stuck in your teeth. So that I feel indebted for the rest of my life? After all, it's essentially your business. And you took me in out of kindness, out of old memories, so to speak. Even your employees don't consider me the boss. They still come to you to approve any of my orders. And don't pretend that it's not true. Bridget looked at Duncan with surprise. He had never opened up to her in this way. Greedy, vengeful, and envious. It turns out that for most of his life, he had only played the role of a loyal brother, a loving husband, and a good father, while holding a grudge and hoping to one day turn that grudge against the one he owed everything to. Truly, the most malicious enemies are those to whom we have done good. Let's be honest, Duncan. I have learned a lot in the past few days, and apparently, I have deeply hurt you in some way if you harbor such hatred. Duncan snarled. How have you hurt me? Oh, no. You simply stepped into my family, replacing me as the beloved son on the pedestal. Our parents looked at you until their last day, while I, the failure, with no huge inheritance, had to constantly revolve around you just to secure a warm spot by the throne. So, you think our parents also viewed the world solely through the prism of self-interest, huh? Jerry shook his head with pity, looking at his brother. But it's not my fault that they accepted me into the family. I didn't choose to be an orphan, and I never tried to replace you. It never even crossed my mind, Duncan. I was grateful to be accepted as one of their own. Yes, you always take away what is dear to me. You've always had plenty of admirers, while I'm just a clown, entertaining everyone with tongue twisters. And even when I wanted to invite Bridget on a date, you managed to get ahead of me, Jerry. I did everything to keep you from reaching her. But you, the hero, surpassed all obstacles and won over the princess. Duncan caught Destiny's gaze and then glanced away, blushing slightly. Bridget felt tears streaming down her cheeks. You. How dare you? What about Destiny? Did you even think about her? Bridget shouted. Destiny, she's my wife, a beautiful, stunning, and intelligent woman. I've always admired her, but you can't command your heart. Isn't that right? Duncan said. It's worth acknowledging that I fulfilled my family duties admirably. Isn't that so? I just wanted to be closer to you, to be there for you when you needed support. Duncan stumbled over his words. Bridget felt dizzy. Jerry immediately came over and embraced his wife by the shoulders. Fine, let's suppose you embezzled money from our joint venture, Duncan. You lay in wait, hoping I would stumble so you could try to win over Bridget. But something happened, and you couldn't wait anymore, right? I tried to start my own clinic. I borrowed money from serious people, Jerry. But during the construction phase, the contractor betrayed me, and I was left without money and without a clinic. My income from Oakland wouldn't have been enough to repay the debts. And I started receiving threats. They didn't only threaten me, they promised to reach Destiny, the children. I couldn't let that happen. Quite noble of you. And so, you decided to kill two birds with one stone, right? Jerry clarified. Set me up to take the fall, so when I end up in prison, you can sell the business and pay off the debts. And also, to claim the heartbroken Bridget, right? Bridget suddenly remembered something. Wait, you were following me? And, more importantly, you stole my purse. Duncan sat at the table with his head lowered. I needed your keychain. You conveniently forgot your purse, so I took advantage of the opportunity. The keychain? Why, Duncan? You lovebirds have identical keychains, Duncan reluctantly explained. I remember because once we had a double date on Valentine's Day, and you gave Jerry matching keychain lockets with photos inside. You two are the embodiment of family love. Duncan grimaced. I needed as many things as possible to point to the kidnapper, so I slowly detached Jerry's keychain, but I lost it. I couldn't have discreetly taken yours. You women pay attention to such details. But I also used your keys to grab Jerry's jacket. Well, everything you did is absolutely suspicious, Destiny said. You shouldn't tackle things you're not good at. Planning is clearly not your forte. And I found Jerry's keychain in the pocket of your jeans when I was putting them in the laundry, so I set it aside to give it back but forgot. You're an idiot, Duncan, a downright incredible idiot. All right, I have one more question, Jerry said, holding Bridget tightly. You have a wife and two children. Destiny is Bridget's best friend. How were you planning to start a relationship with my wife? It would have worked out somehow, Duncan said. Women in distress are very susceptible and vulnerable. No wonder you rescued Bridget in no time after the plane crash. You were her savior, damn it. Bridget would have seen with her own eyes the helpless girl you supposedly kidnapped. That's why I wanted her to personally be at that warehouse to find irrefutable evidence. And then, Jerry, it's all about technique. I would have comforted her and saved her. What a fool you are. Destiny suddenly burst into laughter. And why didn't I see it all these years? You're clinically foolish. Your reasoning is as if you've only read bad books about women and never actually seen them in person. Bridget couldn't help but smile. Duncan's speculations did sound remarkably comical. Larry, if I may ask, Jerry turned to the head of security, please take the ladies home. My brother and I have a lot to discuss in private. Larry nodded briefly and turned to the friends. They obediently stood up. Destiny bid farewell to her husband with an indecent gesture, continuing to mock him. Finally, at home, Bridget felt safe. Her familiar nest seemed cozy and impregnable once again. The sleepless night had taken its toll, so she quickly changed and jumped into bed. She knew there were many conversations ahead with her husband and Destiny, but she didn't want to think about it right now. Bridget woke up to a kiss. Without opening her eyes, she wrapped her arms around her husband's neck and pulled him closer, inhaling his familiar scent. Jerry, without undressing, lay down next to her, holding her close. I missed you, he complained. I missed you too. And you're a scoundrel and a rascal, Bridget replied, lightly pinching his hand. Why is that? Jerry asked. Why did you lie to me about Fairbanks and then go play spy games yourself? What if I had gone to that dark, scary warehouse alone? In short, don't leave me anymore, Jerry, and never lie. Agreed, Jerry kissed his wife on the warm crown of her head. Oh, by the way, what did you decide? You can't work with Duncan anymore. I'll buy out his share, well, the share of the business, minus the $10,000 we transferred to Isabel. And then he can decide how to live his life. But you and Destiny did the right thing by turning to Larry instead of the police. Otherwise, Duncan would have to face the consequences, and no matter what, I don't want him to go to jail. You know, I feel really heavy-hearted right now. I'm losing my family for the third time. First, my parents, then my adoptive parents, and now Duncan. My love, I understand. Bridget raised her head and kissed her husband on the chin. No one could have even guessed. Well, nothing can be done about it. I had a brother and a best friend, and now I have neither. What about Destiny? Bridget suddenly became alert. We discussed that too. Duncan will take the money for his share, and all the belongings will go to Destiny and the children, plus alimony. And if Destiny wants, she can always work with us. All right. My love, where should we celebrate your birthday? It's only a week away. Surprise me, Jerry smiled. Oh, I will, Bridget replied. A week later, Bridget and Destiny sat at a table in a cafe, discussing the final dishes for the birthday celebration. I've invited all our friends, even a few former classmates from other cities. They'll fly in. We've discussed the menu and the music. I think I haven't forgotten anything, Bridget said. Yes, calm down already. It's a birthday party, not a reception at the British King's Palace, Destiny replied, taking a sip of her coffee and pondering. The only thing is, everyone will be asking where Duncan is. He's such an idiot, after all, an idiot. By the way, where is he, Destiny? The deal to sell his shares seemed to be closed. What about your divorce? Have you even seen him?
Yeah,
He's alive, it seems. He signed all the papers. He begged for forgiveness, imagine that. He pleaded for me to reconsider, saying how I would manage with 2 kids without him. Well, the fool. I looked at him and thought, how could we live together for so many years and know each other so poorly? It's sickening to think that he played a role the whole time, even when he kissed me, even in bed, even when Dory was born. And Quentin. How he treated him all these years, like a son or an annoying hindrance. I'll never know, even if Duncan decides to tell. I don't trust him anymore. So let him go far away and for a long time. I hope I never see that lying bearded bastard again. Bridget squinted. You're surprisingly calm, dear. I suspect there's a reason behind it. Could it have something to do with our acquaintance, the head of the security department? Destiny choked on her drink and coughed. Bridget sympathetically patted her friend on the back. So, Destiny, does Mr. Larry support a single woman with 2 children? Bridget said with a laugh. Stop right now. Destiny's face turned tomato red. I haven't even gotten divorced yet. I'm a decent woman, after all. The friends laughed together. For her husband's birthday, Bridget carefully chose her outfit. Jerry always looked at her with admiration, regardless of what she wore. But today she wanted something special. She gathered her thick, light hair into a low, elegant bun and applied coral lipstick to her lips. She took out a dress from the wardrobe, a red, form-fitting dress that hit just above the knees. In it, she looked like a movie star at an awards ceremony. Bridget fastened a heavy coral necklace around her neck and was satisfied with the result. Bridget cautiously opened the sleek black case and looked at the bracelet once again, the one she had ordered as a gift for her husband. There was an engraved inscription on a small gold plate next to the clasp. Bridget smiled as she read it, and her heart sang sweetly. In the restaurant, numerous guests started to gather. The guest of honor was running slightly late, as always, attending to urgent matters at work. Bridget arrived early, adamantly refusing Destiny's assistance. She surveyed the hall adorned with live flowers, checked on the cake, and instructed the waitstaff. Welcoming the first guests, Bridget curiously glanced towards the door. Finally, Destiny appeared, accompanied by Quentin, dressed in a smart suit. Destiny herself was radiant. Her dark curls shone in the bright electric light, and her slender legs peeked through the slits of her long dark green dress. What an idiot Duncan is, Bridget managed to think before breaking into a smile. Following Destiny into the restaurant hall, nervously adjusting his tie, came Larry, holding little Dory's hand. The girl wore a contented smile, occasionally pausing and twirling around, showing off her new fancy dress to the world. Destiny approached her friend and embraced her, sweetly smiling. Stop laughing, she hissed into Bridget's ear. Your face looks like a cat that's eaten too much cream. Bridget greeted Larry while still grinning. I'll kill you, Destiny promised, making her way to her seat. Bridget didn't even notice Jerry materialize next to her. I might go blind from your beauty, my dear, her husband said. And also from the incredible richness of this whole event. It's exquisite, Bridget said. I wanted to tell you that Duncan came by. He asked for forgiveness and said he's leaving for New York. He'll try to start his own business there. He's settled his debts. I think he never believed until the end that I would pay him half the money for the company. Apparently, he judges everyone around him based on himself. I always considered him family. He said he hopes that we will forgive him someday. I don't want to hear about him, Bridget waved it off. We might forgive him, but we won't let him get close again. I don't even want to think about him. I can't wait to give you your gift, my love, before we sit down to eat. Bridget pulled out a small box. Her husband opened it with interest and held the bracelet in his hands. Upon seeing the engraving, he immediately put it on and hugged his wife tightly. Thank you, this is the best gift. I never dared to dream of something like this. I'll never take it off. Bridget grinned happily and led Jerry to the table. Throughout the evening, she enjoyed watching Destiny, who blossomed even more in such a short time. Her friend was receiving the attention of Larry, who couldn't tear his gaze away from his companion. Bridget rejoiced for her friend, still feeling a sense of guilt. She understood that it wasn't her fault, that Duncan had invented some fateful love for himself, using Destiny along the way. But she couldn't shake the feeling that she bore some responsibility for not recognizing those feelings in time, and contributing to those unhealthy dynamics. However, now, looking at Larry, head over heels in love, and Destiny melting with pleasure, Bridget realized that her friend had finally received what she deserved from fate, true love and genuine relationships. Late at night, after listening to all the congratulations, eating tons of food, and being exhausted from dancing, the spouses finally made it home and collapsed into bed. Jerry gently embraced Bridget, who fiddled with the bracelet on her husband's hand. In the dim light of the bedside lamp, the engraving sparkled. To the best father of our child. Bridget sighed with contentment and closed her eyes, pressing her hand against her still flat belly. Miracles happen, she thought, drifting off to sleep.